Alderman. It's our second regular scheduled meeting on July the 16th. We're starting about 6:10. We had a meeting before, so we need just a little bit of break before we started the meeting. First item on there is our prayer and pledge, and tonight, as always, we're honored to have Mr. Corky Larson with us. We all stand. He's going to do our prayer and pledge tonight.
Father, we pause to thank you this evening as we begin this meeting for the privilege of living in a land where we can pray and where we can seek your blessing to guide and direct in the work that we do. We thank you for the many blessings you've given to people right here in this area through the years. And we ask you tonight that you'll be with our council as they meet. There are issues that need to be decided, and we pray that you will bless each one, that your will might be done in our lives, Father, in the work we do tonight. We thank you that we live in this land of freedom where we can be true and faithful to you. And I just pray that tonight our service will be acceptable in your sight. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. We appreciate all you do for our community and being involved on the different things that you are. Roll call, Ms. King.
Alderman Bratton.
Here.
Alderman Callis.
Here.
Alderman Coker.
Here.
Alderman Harbin.
Here.
Vice Mayor McDowell.
Here.
Alderman Menace.
Here.
Alderman White.
Here. Okay, thank you. Next, we need the approval of the agenda. I do have a couple of things on agenda. Do we have a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
To have a second? I'd like to, on Resolution 1265, is dealing with the server. We had the work study. I'd like to take that off of tonight's meeting. Chris, our IT person, there's some questions. He can answer those. He's on vacation. So I'd like to wait till he can be here to answer any questions about that and be sure we do get the right answer. So I'd like to take it off the meeting tonight.
1265.
Right,
Okay.
under Public Works. It's and that way Chris can answer any questions that may come up. Also, we've had a request to move item under legislative, be item D, discuss and take possible action on charter change to the front of the meeting. So that will be right before the Planning Commission meeting part starts. We'll move that item to there.
So moved.
I'd like to have one addition, if I may, to legislative.
Okay.
Discuss listing of bids for paving of Portland Boulevard.
And I need to make an addition to the Alcoholic Beverage Board as well.
All right, we're going to put under the bids for paving.
No, you did it.
Under where am I?
Also under, you say something under alcohol and beverage?
Yeah,
board?
just making changes to the beer ordinance.
Okay. Then also under airport, we need to add one that just handed out. It'll be the first reading of ordinance of renewal of the grant contract for the airport for the maintenance. We'll put that under the airport. And y'all help me be sure I don't forget
Where
something.
do we put the bids at?
Legislative.
Okay.
Last item.
Standing legislative.
All right, is there anything else? So we're taking off 1265. We're adding the grants under airport, adding an item under alcohol and beverage board, and adding ads under paving. Is there anything else for the team? And then moving, yes, then moving the discussion or possible take action charter change to the first of the meeting. Anything else? Y'all help me remember all this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have in our meeting 2 items for public hearing. At this time, these are the only 2 items that the public needs to respond to. There is right on down for the meeting for the public recognition, which people want to speak on the charter or other items. But right now, this is public hearing only on 2 items. The first is ordinance 12-27. It's an ordinance to authorize a contract between the City of Portland, Tennessee and Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency for 2012 and 13 Low-Income Energy Assistance Program. This is a program where we participate when people can get help on their heat bills we can take those payments for that. Does anyone need to make a comment on this ordinance only? Okay, next is ordinance 12-28, an ordinance to rescind ordinance 12-09, adoption of job descriptions allow for finance director to be created and amend the city recorder's job description. Anyone wish to make a comment on that ordinance only? Okay, if not, next will be communications from mayor and alderman. Does any alderman have anything they'd like to address to the public? No?
I got a couple
Mr.
things, most of the questions. I've been approached about the property that the city sold Jerry Denning for the airport. Guy complaining because he's renting it and collecting rent on city property now. Am I right in understanding that he could do anything he wants to with it but build on it?
Mr. Menace, that was a number of years ago and something I don't think I mean, I'll be glad to go back and research it, but to give you an answer yes or no, I would be scared to do that tonight. That's kind of been my understanding, but I think we need to go back, 'cause it's been a number of years to be sure we answer that correctly.
Yeah, okay. Then the other one is, there's a lot between, Clyde, can't think of his last name. He lives on Oak Street. If you're going down Oak Street, he's on the last house on the left before you get to the drainage ditch. And there's a lot that the city owns
Right.
between him and the drainage ditch. And he said he had been keeping it mowed for the last 14 years, and he would like to buy it. And I told him I'd bring it up for consideration.
That's been talked about before. We can do it at the next work study. I think everybody was open to it. I think we just maybe need to keep some of that, be sure, for drainage in case we ever need to widen that or do some work, maybe not sell the whole thing. So why don't, Thomas, why don't you get with me and let's take a look at that and come to the next work study with a recommendation. That'd be okay, Melvin? And see.
He just don't want it to grow up.
Right, I
You know.
understand. So I think last time we talked was, we just need to be sure and keep part of it. So let us take a good look at it and we'll come with a recommendation, or we'll discuss
Okay.
it next work study.
All right. One more thing, Main Street, grass and weeds are growing up the sidewalk. Get the street department or whoever to spray that, and also the people that did this fantastic job around City Hall here. There's grass and weeds coming up through the mulch already. That needs taken care of.
Yeah, we can get straight to it.
And there's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign up here at Church of Christ going yonder way. Just past it, there's a 30-mile zone, but coming this way, it's 30 all the way. So that 20-mile-an-hour zone, that 20-mile-an-hour sign needs to be moved. It's 20 right there in front of the church going yonder way, but this way is 30.
This, Richard, I think that was put there to be a church zone type, but we may not have, so we just, okay, well.
Well, it was, R.D. Dickens got it put there, I remember.
You go
And
back
it was
long
for,
enough,
you know, church getting out and in, but it don't make sense to have it 20 mile an hour going yonder way and 30 miles coming this way.
I think it was like, okay.
And one more thing, I'd like to know what's been done about the meter on Meadowbrook Road. This lady, what's her name, we gave her all that water? What, Thrasher?
Holly.
Holly Thrasher. I saw the picture of where the meter readers went out there and cut the lock and put a straight pipe in there.
Yeah, let us get our facts. I know, I hate to say something out of port. I'll get back with you on that. Let me check it out. I know we dealt, but right off the top of my head, I may say wrong.
No, all right, that's all so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Been a busy guy.
Straight a lot of complaints.
Well, I'll swap with you if that's all you got, Kurt.
That's all I got.
I wouldn't blame
No,
you.
I just kidding.
If I can get some results, I'll be all right.
All right. Does anyone else have anything for any other alderman have anything they'd like to address to the public? Or?
Melvin covered it.
Right. I just got a couple things. Talking to Chief West today, I know the county lifted the burn ban Friday. We're also lifting the burn ban here in Portland also, since the weather has changed and so forth. One of the things, I don't know if some of you have seen, but we started in Portland about 4 weeks ago, the community walk. It's on Tuesday and Thursday nights, starting at 5:30. We're meeting in different places. The first week was at Richland, second in Meadowbrook, last week at Hospital. This week we're back at Richland. This idea came from what Nashville had been doing with Mayor Dean. When we started this, I saw Mayor Dean ask if he'd be willing to come to Portland one night and walk with us and talk about what they'd done in Nashville with the 100-mile walk, Nashville Vitality. He's very involved in the Way of the Nation movie with HBO documentary. And he's going to be here tomorrow night at 5:30 at the library. So if anyone would like to come out, meet Mayor Dean, hear him talk about those things. And then he's going to walk with us also for a little time. He has to be back in Nashville pretty shortly after that. Then also the Richard Neal, who was here, will be there to talk a little bit about his success in weight loss. So invite anybody to come out to the library at 5:30 and hear him and greet him, and then take a walk with us.
Since you mentioned the burn ban, I noticed in the Portland Leader about the burn ban and a picture of the Mitchellville and other fire departments playing war games with water while we were under a drought alert.
Right. I mean, there was no, under drought alert, there was no automatic ban. It was just a drought alert. So, I mean, they'll need to turn that water in, so, on there. So. And that's part of when we talk about if y'all want to stop every fire department from training, which part of that was training of games, and that's something y'all
Was that
need to
part
do.
of the training?
That's supposed to be part for training also, so. So, I know, but I mean, that's just
It looked like
something we brought to
the
the
paper
work
read it
study.
was a game.
So, I mean, it's going to be up to y'all when we talk about it and come up with the items.
Well, I do next work studies.
Right, it's on the agenda for next work study. All right, anything else? All right, now we have public recognition. This is where the audience may address the council. We'll take about just 2 or 3 minutes. If anyone hadn't signed the list, would you go ahead and sign the list if you'd like to address the council tonight? I know several people have signed it. Does anybody else need to sign it?
I think there's some. Either that or they were getting out of action.
Okay. There's a list there. Luther, can you hand me the list? On public recognition, we actually keep it to 5 minutes or less. It does need to be an item on the agenda. Would ask you to direct it to the council as a whole. Also, council, this is not a time really for us to have interaction back and forth. We will have plenty of time to discuss it among ourselves when we get to the item on the agenda. So this is a time to let the people speak, and their 5 minutes to talk to the council. First we have on the list is Curtis Grove at 104 Arthur Court here in Portland.
Thanks, Mayor.
And I'll be your timekeeper.
It's going to take me a minute and 23 seconds. I'm here to talk about the charter, all the work that went into the charter, the council members, the individuals, the city attorney, trying to head things in a good direction. The one thing that kind of stands out in my mind is we're kind of right in the middle of a huge growth area on the I-65 corridor between North Nashville and up right north of Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I just really hope that we're prepared for it when it does happen. You see a lot of yellow metal rolling right now in Bowling Green, a lot of construction going on. But one of the big things about it, I think, how people vote, that's what the citizens elect this distinguished council for. Whether you vote up or down, hey, that's your prerogative, and you vote with your heart. I'd like to think so. But one of the big things that I really see is this is a government building, and I think it'd be really good if we could get the politics out of a government building, and because that happens a lot of times. And I know they probably sometimes maybe go together, but sometimes things are in different motions, and not everybody's always on the same page. But I appreciate your time and all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Next, we have on the list, I believe this is the way they want to do, Matthew Reed, okay. D instead of, at 107 Emma Drive here in Portland.
I also wanted to address the city administrator position. There's a couple things I think it'll help out with, and I'll try to be brief on them as I possibly can. It would provide the citizen employees of the city with a central point of resolving conflicts. It would give a clear chain of command for the citizens and the city employees. It provides a more effective use of state and federal grants. A city manager or administrator generally has more expertise and availability in the implementation of state and federal costs or federal grants. More efficient management of city funds. I mean, there's one city that found $350,000 they were losing annually because the Tennessee Department of Revenue was mistakenly distributing it to other cities and the county. In 2003, the city of Nashville recovered over $3 million in that way. Better information is provided to the city officials for the decision-making process, which would be this distinguished council. You'd have someone who's doing the legwork for you, giving you a better idea as to what needs to happen or directions that we could go. You also have a continuity of service. Whenever a new mayor is elected, there's always going to be a learning curve, which means you have to learn the ins and outs as you come in as a new mayor. Now, that's usually at least 2 years that you're elected before it can be changed. Now, unless the mayor, breaks the law in some way, there's no way to replace them. With the city administrator, if they come in, they're not doing the job they need to, they can be quickly replaced by someone who can. There's not a waiting period. You also have many programs and changes that are recommended from state orders that could be implemented and overseen by the city administrator, which give the mayor more time to be able to focus his energy on things that are more pressing for the people. Let the city administrator do the work. Let him make the decisions and the council make the decisions. Now, something that I've noticed since I've lived here is there's been a lot of issues. If this city was a business, let's be honest, we'd be close to being bankrupt, being put out of business. The city administrator will at least give us the chance to be able to have this city run as a business. There are many cities, White House, Franklin, Kentucky. You also have Millersville that have a city manager. They have been able to turn around and have a direction for their city to go. Now, I have nothing against the concept of a mayor. I think we need a mayor. But I think we need someone to run this like a business, because we are a business. And when this growth comes, I'm not sure if someone who is just coming in is going to be able to make those hard decisions that someone who's had the education, who's had the experience to be able to run the city. Now, anything a city manager does, this council and the mayor will still vote on. They will still be able to say yay or nay on. But at the same time, you have the ability to have someone who knows what they're doing. Now, their change is a scary thing, let's be honest. But at the same time, if someone didn't take a chance on a motorized carriage, we all would have rode horseback here today. Beyond that, we wouldn't be in the country that we're in right now, because some gentlemen over in England decide this isn't working. We're going to have to make a big change to be able to make a new life for us. This city needs a new life. I know some gentlemen on the board or on the council have decided to vote against it. Whether the reasons are clear to the public, I have not seen any clear reasons given. And unfortunately, I think that hurts us as a city because it divides us and doesn't give us a clear direction for the future. For those who did vote against it, I hope that you change your minds. I hope that you find it not to vote with your heart, but to vote with your head for the city, for the citizens, and for our future. Because we could be the next big thing. But right now, it looks like we're going to be the next last thing going out. Hopefully y'all will take the time to reconsider, because many citizens want a city administrator. It's not a popularity contest. If I have the money and the friends, I can be mayor. But if I don't have the experience and the understanding of how to run a city, it's not going to do the city any good. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next we have Stephanie Palm. She's at 107 Emma Drive in here in Portland.
I took the time to type it out, so excuse me if I don't address each one of you in the eyes. I'm going to cut it close as it is. First of all, I'd like to thank Alderman Coker for bringing the city administrator issue back into light, as many citizens were shocked to learn that the charter changes failed a second vote in City Hall after previously being passed by the same body and unanimously clearing the state legislature. I have spoken with dozens of private citizens regarding the changes, and the resounding majority of folks that I have spoken to were for the change in government. I guess there has been some confusion for supporters as to how this could get as far as coming back for approval after clearing the state, only to have it voted down. Furthermore, even more confusing is the lack of an explanation as to why it failed the second time it was presented for approval. The City of Portland currently sits at a crossroads between continuing to do business as usual and taking a step in another direction. Due to anticipated growth, Portland is in a position to thrive over the next several years. But that growth, unless carefully managed, will not be sustainable for future generations. Our current form of government does not instill in me a sense that we will be prepared to handle the next boom period gracefully. It is my opinion and that of others in this town that only a city administrator will be able to guide our town through the upcoming period of growth that looms on the horizon. As I have stated in other forums, given the nature that elections are nothing more than popularity contests, it does not necessarily speak to the ability of anyone who may be voted in as mayor that they will truly be capable of the responsibilities that that role entails, up to, but especially including, being responsible for the city's day-to-day business affairs. Anyone with enough friends, influence, or money can win a popularity contest. However, being the popular vote does not qualify one to run a coffee shop, much less a town of nearly 12,000. I look at it like this. If you needed brain surgery, would you rather go to a swell buddy who was voted into the title of Brain Surgeon of the Year by his buddies, despite the fact he had never been to medical school? Or would you rather go to a board-certified brain surgeon who has the education and experience to properly get the job done? Most of us would go with the one with the credentials. I know I would. In my mind, the benefits of having the city administrator far outweigh the disadvantages. For example, we have all seen the outcomes of individuals who were elected based on what they had to say, but when the time of action comes, none can be found. In our current form of government, our mayor cannot be terminated for incompetence should that issue arise. However, a city administrator could be terminated if they didn't deliver the goods, so to speak. I think one of the biggest concerns by some who are either on the fence or don't currently support the measure are concerned that the city administrator can just come into the city and run the show with no one to be accountable to. If you read the proposed charter, you'll see that this is far from the case. Under the proposed city administrator form of government, the council is seen as the board of directors, held responsible by the citizens. The mayor is still elected by the citizens and is seen as the chairman of the board who runs the meetings and represents the city in negotiations on county, state, and federal boards. And the city administrator is hired as CEO, who is responsible for day-to-day business activities of the city. The city council still votes on items and still technically runs the city. Yes, the mayor loses his veto power, but he gains a vote in every piece of legislation, thereby giving him more authority overall than a veto, especially considering the veto has only been used twice in 7 years here. The city council, which the mayor actually becomes a part of, is still the governing body of the city regardless. Other cities in our area, such as White House and Millersville, have been quite successful with the city administrator/manager form of government. As a result, both of these cities enjoy a well-organized government body, a well-organized, streamlined chain of command, which is something that Portland could really use right now. As the city grows, it's paramount to keep your citizens on the same page with your government. And a city administrator could be a great asset to bridge the gap between the two, an issue which seems to come up for Portland time and time again. As our city stands at the precipice of change, we must decide whether we use a real parachute or a plastic bag to aid in our descent to the ground. Change in our community is inevitable. How we prepare for that change will determine our quality of life from that point. I urge everyone to contact the City Council and ask that they give this form of government a chance. What could happen if we all work together to achieve the same goal for Portland? To foster the type of environment that families want to call home and businesses want to be a part of. It seems to be a law of nature, inflexible and inexorable, that those who would not risk cannot win. It's time we took a step in another direction and said goodbye to business as usual. Thank you.
Next on the list is Charles Ware at 149 Core Street, Portland.
Well, I haven't been at this podium in a while, but I felt that this issue I should come and speak on. First and foremost, I want to thank the individuals that spent all the time on the charter issue. I was one of the few citizens that made an attempt to at least come to most of the meetings, if not all of them. I sat back there where the chief of police is sitting right now. And I was given an opportunity to ask questions. The city attorney allowed me to ask questions, and there was conversation between us. Alderman Coker allowed me to ask questions, and there was ample time for people to come in and have their issues resolved if they had issues, if there was something that they didn't understand about this. A lot of work went into it. I saw the work firsthand. I saw the things that this gentleman did. He sat up there where the mayor's sitting right now, and he spent a lot of time going over each individual line of our charter. It wasn't something that was done overnight. It wasn't something that was done quickly. It was very thought out. It was very tedious, and it was a lot of hard work. Now, is the vote going to change? Probably not. This is probably not going to go any further than right here. But I wanted to come forth, and as a citizen of Portland, Tennessee, I wanted to thank these individuals for all their hard work. They really put a lot of time and effort into this. And I just want to say that I think it's an embarrassment to the city that we sent this to the state, and then it came back and it was voted down. Think about what you're doing, gentlemen. Think about it hard. If you didn't think it was the right thing to do, you shouldn't have sent it the first time. There was a lot of time for you to come in here and ask your questions. There was a lot of time for you to come in here and have your issues resolved if you had issues with this charter. I'm still on the fence as far as this is concerned myself. But I have read a lot of things that Alderman Coker has written, and I believe that he has answered a lot of my concerns. Do I think there's valuable and vital candidates for the mayor of this city? Absolutely. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals right up here that would make a great mayor. There's 2 or 3 women back here that I think would make great mayors. One of them used to sit right over here, Erin. I think she'd make an outstanding mayor. But the question you have to ask yourself is, are they going to take the time to run for mayor, and are they going to give up their lives and their careers for a 4-year stint or an 8-year stint? The last time Mayor Wilbur ran, nobody ran against him. He ran unopposed. So what are we looking at in 2013? What are we looking at in 2000, whatever, the next time the mayor election comes up? Is there going to be a viable candidate that's going to come forth to run this city? Think about that. There's a reason why we do this, gentlemen. I ran for city council for one reason. You gentlemen are sitting up here for one reason. It's not for the money. Nobody's getting rich doing this. It's not for the glory. If you ask any of us who a city councilman was 5, 10, 15 years ago, it'd be hard for me to say who one was. We do it for one reason and one reason only, and that's for the future of this city for our kids. Alderman Coker's got beautiful children. You've got a beautiful daughter. Alderman Callis has got a handsome grandson. We all have children, and we want to make this city a better city for them.
1 minute.
So is the vote that you made on this issue the right thing for your children and your grandchildren? Or did you make the vote for another reason? Think about that, gentlemen. Is what you do today going to have a lasting, long-term effect on our city for our children? So the next time that we send something to the state, are they going to look at it and say, psh, they made us look like dummies last time, and it's going to go and file 13? Think about that, gentlemen. What you did today and what you did the last meeting can have a long-lasting effect on this city for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. I don't want to leave anyone out, and I know somebody may not knew they should sign it. Anyone else want to address the council that maybe did not sign up? So I want to be sure everybody gets their opportunity to speak. Okay, next we have no other business than CAC. Mr. Garner, I think you Have something with the CAC.
Thank you. I'm Douglas Garton, Chairman of the Citizen Advisory Council of Portland. In the last year, we've been up almost a year now. We've been involved in several things, the Scattersville recycling thing, Field of Church out there with Alderman there, and solved that problem. People got involved. A bunch of them got involved because it actually involved them. We worked on a lot of complaints. The yellow bag, we bought that to the council in May of this year. Maintenance of city parks, a lot of flooding problems that I catch a lot of slack on that we really can't do anything about. The city has had this problem for several years and never done anything about it. I think it needs to be addressed sometime or another. It needs to be addressed, but I'm not sure when. Many people think we're not doing enough to keep the people advised of what's going on in Portland. And maybe they're right. But we are going to change that. Starting mid, we're going to ask the council to go back to the committee system to give us more time between votes and not be from Monday to Monday. I know it was a truancy problem, probably the reason you went to the work study. People want to know why the terms were extended. I know they had an opportunity then, but they want to know now. I think our little election is going to get lost in that November election. And the savings is just not that much. The city charter, I've talked to a lot of people, as long as a bunch of you have too. A lot of people for the city charter, they're scared of one thing, that a person will be put in here as a yes man or a ringer. And they're not going to take a chance on that. And I assure you, if we hear anything about it, we're going to be right on top of it, I assure you. We also want to know more about the IDB board. We want to know how they work. What's their abatement procedures? And what's their guidelines? Has there been a meeting set up with Robson County yet, as was going to happen? Not going to answer that, are you?
Well,
okay.
Chairman,
You're making comments to this committee. This is not a...
Yeah, okay. And it's our tax money. We just want to know how they abate it, how they come up with 100% abatement. We want to know that. And we want to do more town hall meetings to get people involved. But just a lot of issues that we're going to be looking at very closely. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Garner. That's all the public comments, so forth. So now we'll get right into the meeting. Again, I'll ask if, just to be sure no one got left out, does anyone else like to speak? Okay. All right, now it actually the meeting between the council themselves. We'll start with the item moved up where we had either discuss or take possible action on the charter change. This is a request per Alderman Coker.
As was mentioned earlier, citizens were shocked when the second reading failed on the charter changes. They'd expressed a desire to have their say. I shared with them that there was really no avenue to do that unless it was something on the agenda. So in order for those people to have their say, this item had to be added to the agenda. I don't know if I need to make a motion to get it on the floor so that we can discuss it, or what that process is.
I mean, we can discuss if you possible and take some action tonight, then you actually need to put a motion either on the floor, then have our discussion after the second reading. But if you just want discussion only, I think we can allow just discussion only. But
okay.
So I
think the one thing that I wanted to accomplish has been done. Anybody who wanted to address the council had an opportunity to come and address us. And I've talked to a lot of people over the course of the almost 2 years that these changes have been discussed. I think our first meeting was in August of 2010, if I remember correctly. It was October, somewhere around in there. So it's been hammered out for quite some time. I've done a lot of
radio interviews, newspaper stories, Facebook updates. So you'll hear a lot of the figures that were mentioned in the public comments that they got off my Facebook updates. And I even held a meeting at the library, a town hall meeting, to answer any questions and explain to the public why I believe this is a good idea. But what I realized recently, what I have not done, is make that broad of a case here on this channel, which has a much larger audience. And I would like to take the opportunity to do that tonight because that's my mistake. I'd like to make the case for the city administrator to a larger audience that's probably most likely watching tonight, between the cable channel, the radio stations, and the streaming that is available online now. And I hope that everyone interested in this topic will hear and digest the facts and figures that I present tonight. At the public meeting I held at the library, I used a PowerPoint presentation to help kind of direct my thoughts and keep things on track. There's been arrangements made tonight to where what shows up there on the screen will also show up on the television channel. I'd like to thank Chris and Brandon for making that possible. And I got to hit a few buttons here to put that up, and I'll get started on that. Got it? Okay. One of the things that people have asked me, probably the most common things people have asked me, are what's the advantages of having a city administrator and a city administrator form of government? And the number of advantages are numerous. Number one, some of these things were brought up during the public comments. The city administrator provides the citizens and employees of the city with a central point for resolving complaints. It provides a clear chain of command for citizens and city employees. I know that a lot of times city employees feel like they've got 8 different bosses. They got a mayor and they got us 7 in their ear asking them to address concerns and different things like that, and that can lead to a lot of confusion and inefficiency. With this government, both citizens and employees will know who they need to go to in order to have their needs addressed, and they don't have to worry about if they voted for that person or not. It won't be a political position. State and federal grants was another item that was brought up earlier. This is one that I'm a little skeptical of because I honestly think we do a pretty good job with state and federal grants as it is right now. But city administrators do have a broad knowledge of state and federal grants and programs, whereas I know our current mayor has a broad knowledge of that, but mayors that come later may not, and they may have to get up to speed on that. Any city administrator you hire will come with that knowledge already in place. More efficient management of city funds. This is actually one of the things I'm the most anxious and excited about because I found multiple examples of this happening. One city found that they were losing $350,000 annually, so that's a recurring savings, because the Tennessee Department of Revenue was mistakenly distributing to other cities and the county revenues that should have been coming their way. And in 2003, the city of Nashville recovered over $3 million along those same lines. This actually, I think, provides the most promise in how, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, how are we going to pay for this position. Another benefit, better information is provided to city officials for their decision-making process. The city administrator kind of has no choice but to do that. They kind of act as a hub, and the information disseminates out. Found many examples of where that were M-tested surveys. That was one of the benefits that responded the most from the elected officials, is that they really liked that they were able to get information that they needed a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently. Continuity of service, and I think this is something that's kind of been misunderstood what I really mean by that. City administrators do have about I think on average, some more, some less, about a 6-year
average term of service. But when I say continuity of service, I mean the concept that when a new mayor is elected, and the job gets more and more complicated every year. Every time the state or federal government passes a new restriction on to cities, it gets more complicated. So the new mayor has to learn those ins and outs. And I was around when the former mayor was here, and I've asked the current mayor before about how long does it take to get your feet wet and feel comfortable doing the job, and they both came back with the same number, about 2 years. You can have a very good, honest person, an intelligent person, but it's kind of like when I start new jobs, that's when I'm going to make my mistakes because I'm learning the job. And how many mistakes that are very detrimental to the benefit of Portland could be made as a new mayor is getting their feet wet and learning the ins and outs of city and county and federal regulations. City administrators have the education that they have been told, they have been educated that it's in place. So no matter what city administrator you get, they're going to come in with that knowledge. And I'm not going to say they won't mess up, but I do think that it's a less likelihood of that being the educational background that they have. A lot of people don't necessarily like that because they feel like if a city administrator comes in, they won't have the concerns of the people at heart, and that may be true. A mayor comes in with the knowledge of the people and the community because they have to campaign, and the people told them what they want and they vote for them. But they got to learn the job if they're never been mayor before, of course. How many costly mistakes can be made in that 2-year period? A city administrator comes in with knowledge of the job and can lean on the council and the mayor for the will of the people and the community, since we'll be the policy makers anyway. Many of the programs and changes that have been recommended from the state auditors in this past audit and ones before could be implemented and overseen by a city administrator. MTAS, on many of the things I found that they put out about this, that as far as how city administrators help pay for their salary, they usually don't find viable employee safety programs that work effectively to reduce the cost of very expensive workers' compensation claims. Also in the area of insurance, they said especially with smaller cities, which I don't know if we classify as that or not, that the insurance company tells you this is what your rates are going up, this is what your premiums are going up, and then the council tries to find a way to pay for it. The city administrators in other cities have found ways to negotiate and to not just take whatever's handed out by the insurance providers. Professional management can save thousands of dollars in these areas alone. The mayor would be free to represent Portland on various county, state, and federal boards where the big decisions are made, like road projects and different things like that, dealing with federal and state infrastructure. The mayor shared with us during some different meetings that one of the biggest frustrations that he has as mayor, that the job has gotten so big, he needs to be in 2 places at once. He needs to be at these meetings in Nashville and in Gallatin, but he also needs to be here running the day-to-day operations of the city. As it currently stands, you can't be in both places. With the city administrator form of government, the mayor more so focuses on representing us at the MPO and all those places, and you still have a qualified, business-minded individual back at City Hall making sure that things are getting done and things are running smoothly. The ability to change leadership. This was also mentioned earlier in the public comments. When you elect a mayor, you often elect them based on charisma, personality, and the ideas that they present during the campaign season. It's not really known until they're actually in office whether they can get the job done or not. If they prove incompetent, an ineffective leader, or otherwise, the people are stuck with them until the term is up. Mayors can only be impeached if they break the law, not for incompetence, and how much damage can be done in that time. With the city administrator, if it's shown that they interviewed in front of us, they talk a good game, they're awful slick, but they're ineffective in operating the city according to the policies that are passed, they can be terminated and replaced rather quickly if we think that that would benefit more than waiting out the contract. The city attorney's role in cost is minimized with the city administrator. This also goes into how we pay for it category. Many small cities shared that they didn't believe they could afford a city administrator, often pay their city attorneys $80 to $100 per hour to handle problems that could be handled by the city administrator. And I don't know if that changes your view on this, David. You were on the committee and you were in favor of it, but I hope it doesn't. Also, the city administrator form of government greatly diminishes, I don't think it'll ever be gotten rid of, but it greatly diminishes the good old boy system in the hiring and firing process of employees and in the delivery of services to citizens. The spoil system is removed because the city administrator is not indebted to whoever donated to their campaign during an election, and because traditionally also they have less personal attachments as far as family members living inside the city that they want to get jobs for, because traditionally they come from outside of the community. One of the first issues I heard of people that were against this is they believed that Portland is too small for a city administrator. And I didn't think it was, but I tend not to give opinions whenever I can avoid it. I want to go looking for facts to see if what I feel in my heart is bore out with data and information. So I looked up all the cities that have city administrators. If you take all those populations and average it out, the average population of a city with a city administrator is 11,711. The largest of those cities is Franklin. They have a population of 49,412. The smallest city with city administrator is the city of Cornersville with a population of 962. This was a figure that I was very surprised to find, that more than half of the Tennessee municipalities employing a city manager or city administrator have a population of 5,000 or less. And a quarter of the cities with that form of government have 2,000 people or less. So we're right at the average population of a city that uses a city administrator, and with as was mentioned before, the challenges that are upcoming with the new road coming through and all the traffic that will entail, I think that we've passed the point of being too small for a city administrator. This was a big concern with a lot of people that I talked to, and I think this was a concern with other people that voted against this on the body as well. Without the veto power and in this form of government, isn't the mayor just a figurehead? We looked into this with the committee. I would say this is one of the things that absorbed our discussion and deliberation the most, was whether we wanted the mayor to have veto power or not. So I looked at the other cities. MTAS was kind enough to let me know, because it wasn't available online that I could find, that 8 cities in the state of Tennessee that have a city administrator or city manager form of government give their mayor veto power over city legislation. But in all 8 of those cities, if they have veto power, then they don't vote. It's kind of traditionally an either-or type thing. Either you can vote on all the legislation or veto. I didn't find any, and they didn't know of any that allowed both. The current proposal matches that. The mayor loses the veto power but gains the right to vote on every piece of legislation that comes before the city. And the reason that was done is because the committee felt that would make the mayor less of just being a figurehead. It would give the mayor input and influence and power over every single thing that's voted on, whereas a veto we didn't believe was as strong. The veto, to my memory, since Mayor Wilbur's been elected, it's only been used twice. Is that correct? You can remember? Once. And it rarely stands up in its original form. Usually, if it does stand up, some type of change took place. That was the case with the HR position. That what was vetoed actually wound up happening, just in a different form, in an agreement. Unfortunately, the veto, to be honest with you, is not very powerful in Portland compared to a veto on the national level. In Portland, it takes 4 votes to pass something and only 5 to override. So basically, any veto will only stand up if something passed by a 4-3 vote. It's not like the national government, to where if the president vetoes something, you got to go and get 80 more people to your cause. So I mean, the national veto is definitely a much more powerful tool than the one we have here in the city of Portland. And this was my thought that I posed at the library that day: which makes the mayor a figurehead more, leaving the veto power that the mayor would only use once every few years, or giving them the power to vote on everything. And that was the reasoning behind why the committee made the recommendation to go with no veto power, but allow them to vote on everything, was to allow the mayor not to be a figurehead, because I think we believe, and it's true, that the people that run for this office want to be able to change things. They want to affect policy, and we believe that that was a more effective way of the mayor being able to do that. I'm not going to say that the mayor is as strong in this system as he is in the strong mayor system. He's not. But I believe the mayor in the city administrator system is far from being a figurehead. Under the proposed city administrator form of government, this is an example I used that made it a lot clearer to many of the people that were a little confused on how it would operate. In the city administrator form of government, the council is seen as the board of directors of a business, with the voters and citizens of the community being the shareholders, having the ultimate power and the ultimate control. The mayor is still elected by the people and serves as a type of the chairman of the board, in that they run the meetings, they serve as the primary link between the city council and the city administrator, different things like that. And the city administrator is seen as the business's hired CEO, hired to come in and affect certain policies passed by the board of directors and run the business on a day-to-day basis. That's a good example of a modern day example of what the city administrator system is all about and how it operates. The mayor and the city council will decide what needs to be done based on the needs of the people that elected them and that talked to them throughout the course of their term. The city administrator will be there to propose policies for how that can be done. That's kind of the relationship that the city administrator has with the council. How will we pay for it? I've already mentioned a lot of the ways in revenue savings and different things like that, but this is also something that I wanted to be sure got out there, that a large part of the salary for the city administrator would come from the savings in the mayor moving from a full-time mayor to a part-time mayor. The mayor's salary would be cut. Now I'm wondering if I figured this correctly. I believe we approved it was going to be double what a regular alderman was, so $1,200 a month. I believe that's right. That comes up to $14,400 a year. That's a savings just on the salary of $45,600. Also, since the mayor moves to a part-time position, the no benefits, that saves about $24,000. So this gives us, just starting out before the city administrator has saved us $1, with $69,600 to be used to help pay for the city administrator's salary and benefits. A lot of people are worried about this one. You know, they want to know how it affects the budget, how we're going to pay for it. And I don't mean to be evasive. Basic answer I have to give them is it depends on how much you pay the person. You could probably pay a city administrator less for city administrators that have less experience or no experience. If you want a city administrator that has lots of experience and has been around the block a time or two, you're going to have to pay that person a little more. So that's a number that really can't be reached as far as a specific dollar amount until we find out which candidate rises to the top that we're going to hire, because it won't be until then that what salary is offered to them. But no matter what salary is offered to them, $69,600 of it's already paid just in those savings alone. There was one other thing I wanted to kind of get an idea, because I don't want to put people off. I do try and get as much good information as I can. This is a chart representing cities comparable to us that employ the city manager, or excuse me, city administrator form of government, and what they pay that city administrator. A lot of times it's hard to compare apples to apples when it comes to cities, because a city of our population may not have the number of employees because they don't have their own gas system or different things like that. So I went looking for cities that matched the population and were close with employees, and 7 of them are listed here with the salaries. It's still a little hard to compare apples to apples, because some of those salaries are for city administrators that have been there for 10 years. So they've gotten raises. That's not where one would start out. So you can see the range there. The lowest salary of those that are similar to us was the city of Newport at $70,000. The highest, and it was the city of, where is it, 120, Mount Juliet, with $126,260. If you take the average of the low range, that was $89,807. The average salary of the high range was $95,016, and it was Crossville right here was the only reason why I had to do that, because it gave a range, not a specific number. So I gave the average if you put that low part in there, and the average if it's the high end of that. I've told people that I'm not going to promise that a city administrator would pay for themselves, but I can say with a very firm degree of certainty that that has happened in many cities, that they have been able to do that. But I'm not a clairvoyant, I'm not a psychic, I can't look into the future and guarantee that that will happen. So I just want to be honest on that there. At the midpoint of these salary ranges, the salary would be $92,500 and benefits would be about $36,000. I actually think this is a little high, but I wanted to get an idea of a worst case scenario type thing. So if you include the money that goes along with it, you would be looking, I think, worst case scenario of a difference of around $60,000. I think once we go through all the interview process, it'll probably settle in at somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40, but that's my own personal opinion on that. Another concern that many people expressed to me was the city council just a rubber stamp for the city administrator. Will someone come in and just do whatever the city administrator tells them to do? I myself find this a little insulting, even though I know the people that told me that don't mean it that way, because basically what that means is that they think I will give up the power and responsibility of my vote, which I think all of us here on this board take that power and responsibility seriously. I think I'm safe in saying that we don't vote for something unless we agree with it and think it's a good idea for the citizens of Portland. I may respect the opinion of a professional manager a little more, and I think we'll get different and better ideas from professional management, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give their idea my vote just because they're a city manager. And I'm hoping that's the way everyone would be on that. It's the city manager or administrator's duty to propose policies. They can't do hardly anything without approval of the council. They can make proposals on methods on how to improve operations and save costs, but those are at the approval of the city council, which is popularly elected. It's the council's job to cross-examine whatever the manager or administrator proposes, and to assure that they line up with what the people are telling us that they want to happen in our community, to line up with their goals and standards and feelings, whatever the case may be. City council members are free to vote against the manager or administrator's proposal at any time. Also, and this is related to the whole rubber stamp, that the city administrator becomes a scapegoat, that whenever something unpopular comes up, the council will vote for it and blame it on the city administrator. And that may happen at some point. Members of the council may try to hide behind a city administrator to escape blame for certain actions, but I really don't have any doubt in the intelligence of the people of Portland to remember the city administrator only carries out the policies passed by the city council, so they can hold the people who are truly responsible accountable, whether it's the administrator or those that pass the policies that the administrator was carrying out. A lot of people wondered if the public can have input on the hiring of a city administrator, and this is actually one thing that I never even considered looking into until someone asked me the question. The answer is yes, sometimes they do. Many city councils have found it helpful to appoint a city manager or city administrator selection committee to help them sort through the applications and evaluate the candidates of the position. Most of the time, well, in the cases where this happens, that committee is made up of private citizens. It's up to the city council to decide how the candidates will be vetted and interviewed, and that can or cannot include public involvement and public input. The organizational structure is vastly improved as well under the city administrator form of government. The people are still at the top because they elect the mayor and the city council. The people elect the policymakers, so they still have the ultimate control and the ultimate power. The mayor and the city council make policies based on what they're hearing from the community. Once those policies are made, the city administrator sees that those policies are carried out, and the city administrator instructs the employees on how to make sure that those policies are carried out and executed and met. It streamlines the hierarchy and organization of government. There is concern, and this wasn't a concern at the time I gave this presentation at the library, so I don't have a slide for it. But over the course of the past few days, many people have expressed their fear, and I think it was mentioned by the CAC earlier, or somebody, I forget if I misidentified who made this point, that if a city administrator form of government is adopted, somebody will be brought in as a yes man, or somebody will be brought in as a ringer, I think the word was used. And it all depends on how you use that word ringer. I mean, ringer isn't necessarily a bad thing. If I knew someone, and I don't, I'll just go ahead and say that, but if I knew someone who had the education, 20 years of experience, and a proven track record of being a good city administrator, I may pursue that person to come in and apply. That's technically a ringer, but that may not necessarily be a bad thing. However, if what some of the citizens fear is true, and there are powers that be with plans to bring in someone that they will control from behind the scenes, 4 people on this council can stop that, because 4 people on this council is what it takes to hire a city administrator. So we still have the ability to prevent that fear from coming to fruition if we stand firm and together on that. One of the things that I ran into the most is I find that someone oftentimes is against something because they can find one thing wrong with it. They can find one risk. And that sets an unfair standard that nothing's a good idea unless it's perfect. There is no perfect idea or perfect system. System we have has its problems. Every system that is being employed in the United States right now has its problems. There is no perfect form of government out there. Each form has its risk. So as a city, we have to ask ourselves, which of these systems puts Portland in the best position to abide by state and federal laws, which are getting more complicated all the time, state and federal regulations, which are getting more numerous all the time, and which of these systems has the best chance of managing the growth that's on its way to Portland. I know it's a drastic change, and oftentimes the first reaction to drastic change is fear and unease. That's why I've tried extra hard to get facts and figures out there. That's why I wanted to be sure that this information was available to people here tonight, as large as audience as I guess I could get it out at one time, so that everybody can get past the point of fear and to a point to where they can weigh out the pros and cons of this system to arrive at their opinion. We can get by with our current system. We've done so for 150 years. We'll be fine without a city administrator, but I think we could be great with the help of a city administrator, and I'll take great over good any day of the week. Over 150 years ago, if I was alive back then, and I'm sure many were expressed, I could find a multitude of problems that might be caused by bringing a railroad through the town of Richland. And some of those fears have come true with derailments and things like that. But imagine where Portland would be today if those fears kept our city founders from making a decision that had an overall vast net benefit, not only for those living at that time, but every single citizen that has come after them. I don't think this decision we're debating here tonight is equal to that, but I can honestly stand before you tonight and say that I think it's close. It's something that will affect every citizen of Portland from this day forward. I understand and admit that we may have to deal with a derailment or two along the way, but I think overall benefit will greatly outweigh this. I know it's a big change, but so was the railroad when it came through. We have to put fear, politics, and future political ambitions aside, and we must move beyond that and make the decision that has the greatest likelihood of helping our city prosper. Do we think that the current system has the best chance of helping Portland prosper? Or could the city administrator system help Portland prosper even more? That's the question that's before us tonight. I beg and I think you will consider this with the gravity and importance that it warrants. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions about any of that, I'd be glad to answer it. Mm-hmm.
Pay structure really quick, since you may be able to answer this.
You mean that chart that I had?
Yes, sir. Just for clarity, because you put those numbers up there just to help me understand. It was explained to me that the mayor's salary, is it not paid completely out of the general fund?
I think because they're elected official, yes, they have to.
And so, since it's completely out of the general fund, all of the savings could not be applied because, I'm just trying to clarify this, the city manager will have to be paid based on the percentage that it administers or manages throughout the city, so, and it may be, somebody has to decide that, whatever that percentage is, whether it's half and half between enterprise and general, is that correct? So, the 69,600 could not, I don't think, be applied totally to that. A portion of that could, then the rest of it has to come out of enterprise funds, water, gas, sewers.
That depends on how much you pay them. I mean, if you look at that and we wind up, like the average was, paying the city administrator $92,000, and we see that at the course of their duties, they spend 2/3 of their time dealing with general fund type issues, you could use that 69.6 to pay that, and then the difference could come from the enterprise fund. So that 69.6 is a direct number that savings would be applied to the general fund, but if we paid the city administrator $70,000, we may split that 35 general fund, 35 enterprise, because they will be working for both departments.
That was a question I had and it was one that they didn't have a guideline on, and I think a couple of years ago that maybe the mayor and the city recorder had looked at maybe how much time was spent. Did y'all do something like that at one time? Yeah.
Even though, your council spends a lot of their time on enterprise, but all elected has to come out.
So that was the only thing I was just want to be sure about that, just to make sure that, we wouldn't say we only need 30 more thousand. That may not be the case. So.
Well, that's, I mean, no matter how we split the salary, this is the savings that's created by the mayor going, right, to general fund by mayor going to part-time. Right. Yeah.
And one other question I had, you were talking about the citizens and having their input, which I think is wonderful. I brought up once before about possibility of why couldn't this be done referendum vote by the citizens, and I guess I've been a little confused. Can we or can we not? Because I went and was reading some things on MTAS about some cities do referendum votes to approve charter changes.
Those are home rule cities.
Only a home rule can do that? And there's no other city that can approve a referendum
I posted that on my Facebook page, that the state of Tennessee is very specific on what can be done by resolution, by private act charters. There's 13 things. And unless, if you were going, well, I'll take it, it's not just homeroom charters. If we wanted to adopt the city administrator charter that is spelled out in TCA, no deviation, that could go to a referendum. Right, exactly. Any changes, if you want any control over that or anything different from that set form, that can't be sent to referendum.
That question 2 or 3 times, and when I go read it, it's just a slight confusion to me as I look at that, so I was curious. Thank you.
Sure, we all have our opportunities. Anyone else like to make any comments this time? Mr. McDowell?
I just want to say that in respect of Mr. Coker, I appreciate all the work that he and Mr. Lawson put into doing this, and everybody that was on that committee. And I kind of hate in a way that I know there was a lot of work put into it. There was a lot of charter changes, not just that. There was a lot of pieces in our charter that had to be tweaked, and things had to be removed and things added to make it more compliant with today's living. That's why I kind of hoped in a way that could have been broken into pieces. That's such an emotional issue. I wish that could have been a separate thing, and because that very thing happened that it caused the whole thing to fail, and now none of that work got recognized, it seems like. And Tim, he's one of the most gifted guys that I know of at research and speech, and when he's passionate about something, he pours his heart out and puts it into it. He should have ran for president, probably not Portland City Council, but I know that I can't give you, crowds of people in here that say they're against it. I guess you and I talk to a different group of people. You talk to the people that are for it and support it, and you make a good argument, and I just talk to that voter that's not for it, that thinks that they like the current situation as we have it, and I appreciate everybody coming to speak in front of the council tonight, and they all made good points and had good arguments there. I think one of them said that, we would once be able to be proud to call Portland our home, and I'm proud to call it my home now. It doesn't, whether that change is made or not. And one of the comments made is that it's embarrassing to send something to the state and it be rejected like that. And I'm a firm believer that that's why that checks and balances is in place like it is. That's why they say that you send it to us, and once we pass it, it comes back for a supermajority vote. That protection is in place for that very reason, because between that first vote and that second vote, things could arise, things could come up, and I mean, to say that they would throw our next presentation in the trash and not send it back, I think would be foolish. I mean, I think that's kind of their job, is they take what we ask for and they put faith in it and they put it to a vote down there and change it and send it back to us. I mean, we don't. If it was always going to be voted on when it come back in, then what would be the purpose of that, of having that written like that? Said that somebody saved some money, $300,000, because of taxes not being paid out properly, and then you said the city of Nashville saved $3 million. Well, they're a mayor form of government. They're not.
Yeah,
city
but how many
mayor.
professionals do they have paid big
Well,
salaries?
I understand that, but we have.
We don't have that money.
I understand that, but we have what I think are qualified department heads that run our departments, and I know we've had a little snag in a row with finance director, but I think we'll be back on track with that hopefully, and be able to iron that out. And I think when we have good people in place, finance directors and HR people, that we've got a very well educated and diverse staff that can run this city as it's been ran before. I think probably that even cities with city managers and city administrators all had budget problems when the economy went sour like it did several years ago. That wasn't unique to us. They all had those problems, and I don't think that would have been a big fix-all for anyone. I didn't really have much to say. I know that in the state of Tennessee, more cities have a mayor form of government than a city administrator. That's
nationwide it's about half and half.
Is that right? About half and half nationwide. I mean, cities work all over the country, though half of them do with a mayor form of government. I don't know that that's ever really crippled anybody about being like that.
I'm not making the case that it'll cripple us.
Yeah.
It's just, as I said in the presentation, I think the other one will allow us to do even better.
I understand that. And I know we don't, historically we don't have a good voter turnout whenever we have elections. I mean, that's been pretty well known. And that's one of the things that I hope that changing that election date will fix that, and you'll have more participation in it. I mean, I know that even there were 4 people that spoke in favor of this tonight, and 2 of the 4 have never voted in a city of Portland race. So that kind of bothers me. That's about all I have.
Okay. Anyone else?
I mean, I don't know any way of saying this without sounding glib, so please understand I don't mean it that way. 4 people spoke out, and 2 are new to the community and hadn't voted yet because an election hasn't come up yet. That's 4 people spoke out against it. There spoke out for it. There are 0 here speaking against it. I don't think any of us tried to get anybody to come out for it. It was publicized just everywhere, that come out and let us know what you think. The same publication they saw, the same information they saw was available to people in favor and opposed to it. And I actually did have a lot of people contact me that were opposed to it. That's where all those questions and points that were in that presentation, well, I won't say all, but probably 90% of them, where that came from. Once I got them the information and once I explained it the way I did, I'd say probably, I can only think of 3 people that I didn't, for lack of a better term, convert after I gave them the information and the facts there. And it's for that reason that there may be a lot of information that was presented here tonight that the people we represent had never seen before, and that's my fault because I probably should have done this at first reading. That maybe we should refer this until the next meeting just to let them digest it and get back to us as far as how they feel about this. I don't want to make that motion right now because I don't want to stop anybody else from having any discussion they want, but if with all the new information, new to them of course, we've been talking about it for quite some time, but there may be a number of people out there right now that heard something for the first time that makes them want to reconsider. And if I know you kind of get stuck with the whole liquor by the drink thing because you were the public face that brought it up, and I don't want to saddle you with this issue too, but if you want to encourage the people that talked to you that were against it to come, that would give them an opportunity to do the same thing and have their piece spoken as well.
All right, is anyone else willing to
I'd
comment?
like to thank Tim for this good information. I know he's put a lot of work and effort into it. I think he's done a fantastic job. I think the committee did a good job putting this whole thing together, and I know they did a whole lot of work. I wasn't involved in it, but I appreciate what they did, and I appreciate what you've done. I'll have to say that I've had several questions about it. No one has told me they were against it. Now, they've questioned me about it, and I give them my opinion as to why I voted for it. And I've got a neighbor that lives across the street from me, well-known, former businessman, been in Portland all his life, successful, very successful man in business. And he asked me about it. And I talked to him and told him why I voted for it. And he was satisfied with it. He could see where the council would have full and complete control over the city administrator, and he could be fired if he wasn't living up to his responsibilities and wasn't doing his job. Whereas, like's been said, if you get a mayor that's a rotten apple, you've got him for 4 years unless he does something really bad.
Criminal. I mean, they can, and I don't mean to minimize it, but they can be a blubbering idiot, for lack of a better term, but as long as they don't do, that's no reflection on you, Mayor. But if they don't do anything criminal, you can't impeach them.
Right. And another statement was made by one of the speakers, I don't remember which one it was, about the, well, you know what? I lost my train of
Sorry, I interrupted you. That's my fault. Sorry.
They got to think about that blow.
It'll come back to me, maybe. Anyway, this, what I've seen presented by Tim, has just convinced me. I was convinced already. I was against it to start with, if you all remember, because I didn't like the wording, some of the wording, and you all changed it to my satisfaction, and I thought it was a good change, and evidently y'all did too, because you changed it, and I voted for it. I stuck with it, and you just propped up my position tonight with the good information that you've had. And I've talked to several people, like I said, and nobody has told me, come out and said, no, I'm not for it. They, you know, I explained to them why I voted for it, and they'd just go on, you know. They'd just say, well, you was wrong. You shouldn't have done that, and nobody has told me that. And then nobody's come up and said, I appreciate you voting for that either. So, but I have talked to a lot of people, and nobody yet has told me that they thought I was wrong.
Thank you, Melvin. Anyone else like to?
No, I didn't bring this up, but I don't want to say credit, but I just think it bears mentioning. There's only 2 people that this move would affect in the pocket directly, you know, that being the mayor and the city attorney. And I think it's a testament to their character that they're able to go beyond their own personal interest and look at an issue. And I think it's very telling that at the committee meetings, David was a very vocal proponent of the city administrator form of government, and our sitting mayor, who's doing the job to the best of his ability, also recognizes the need and value of it and is in favor of it as well. I think that speaks a large part not only to their character but to the benefit that they see that this move could make.
My thought just came back to
Okay.
one of the people that spoke asked how many people on this council could run a business, their own business, like we run the city business. If there's a person on this council that's got a business, I wish you'd raise your hand and tell me that you could run your business, personal business and finances, not necessarily a business, your personal business. How could you handle spending money like we do and stay in your home and keep your cars and your family and everything that you need? I don't believe there's a person in here that could do it.
Okay. Does anyone else we're still just in a discussion spot right now. Does anyone else wish to join into the discussion or any comments?
I don't want to cut in. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. I mean, Tim, I appreciate all your hard work and everybody's hard work and everybody's input over the last, basically year, I guess you could say, on this. Tim is correct. I am have come out before and am in favor, and I think it'd be a great step for the city forward to do this. I think we can see a lot of things be accomplished. Portland's at a tremendous crossroads right now with the road situations. Our industries are starting, to get back to where they were at one time, and we've got a lot ahead of us. And I think going to this type of system will give. We need to be talking and trying to get it on the agenda, but we've got so many things that are urgent to take care of. We need to be looking at the south side of town, how we're going to rezone it, how we're going to provide infrastructure to it. We need to be looking at the north side around the interchange. We've got so many big issues that we really need to talk about that are goals of the city, where we want to be, and policies that I think a system of this will give the council more opportunity to do those things and really see where we want Portland to be set in the next few years, because the opportunities is here before us. It's just a matter if we're going to take advantage of them or not. And I think it's, would be great to see our time be able to spend to that. So,
Tim, was it your wish that we move on this tonight, or are you wanting for people who watch this to communicate with us? What was your...
That's kind of what I thought would be a good thing. And like I said, I should have really probably done this presentation at first reading, but it may give the citizens a chance to reevaluate their opinions based on new information and get that back to us. Once everybody's had their discussion tonight, I think we can maybe defer this to the August meeting.
Of course, we've had many discussions, I guess, over this charter changes, and I really appreciate the ability to be able to come and discuss it. We probably beat some of it to death, I guess, at times, but I was telling an alderman earlier, I said, we all run in different circles, I guess, and so I think one circle we probably have in common at times is Facebook. We probably have some of the same people. We read some of the same comments, but in personal dealings with people, a lot of times I run into people who may see an issue different than maybe you see it, or someone else. And we've been debating this for a long time, and as I've said, there's many good points on it. Sometimes I feel like my arm's going to come off at the elbow because I've been twisted so much over the last year, wanting me to move my position somewhat.
Sorry about that, Council.
That's all right.
I want to say something about that when you get done.
Well,
and
when we look at these, and yes, there was a lot of good points, and of course during our discussions, I probably sometimes brought up the opposite point, I guess, on a lot of them, just to kind of see the other view sometimes of it. But I do know that our charter definitely needs cleaning. I'm still not sold that the city manager or administrator is the perfect way, but I'm glad that we're having the conversation. So, but I'm willing
You know, I don't know if it's cause, I'm gonna use the words of my friend Luther Bratton. Can I do that? I mean, he often says that he don't know if it's just cause he's getting older or getting wiser, he says, but sometimes he has a tendency to change his mind on things. But I guess part of me has always wanted this thing to be on a referendum.
I wouldn't be opposed to it if it was possible.
If we can't, I guess we can't. You know, but I'm willing to continue to listen. I'll do that. I can always give you that much, can I?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
Is that more than you get sometimes?
Well,
That's more than
Alderman Callis, I know, got sick because one of the ways I was trying to prod him is every time something would happen, I'd tell him, you know, city administrator could take care of this. City administrator could take care of this. I almost called you during the drought and told you it would have rained by now if we had a city. But I didn't, because I figured you sick of hearing it.
You know, I don't have any comments, but I think in light of all the information.
That sounded a lot like one.
Yeah. No, in light of all the information that's been brought forward, I don't think it's inappropriate to defer this for at least 2 weeks to let maybe some of these individuals that have heard what the wonderful presentation that Tim put on. I know Mr. Lawson's our chairman. He's here and he's interested in. I've heard most of it before during those committee meetings, but I agree with Tim that possibly there may be someone out there that was concerned about how it was going to finance and the powers and all those things. And I think from all the questions that I've heard, there's just about answers. There may not be the answers that you want, but there's answers there. And I think it would be fair to the committee and to the process for us to defer that until whenever the next regular meeting is.
Our next regular meeting will be August the 6th.
So if it'd be appropriate, I'd put that in form of a motion.
Let me say another word first.
Okay.
That's a comment that Fred White made to me one time. Well, first time I was running for council in 1979, Fred White told me, he said, there's one thing you need to remember, and I'm not throwing this at any of you guys now, don't take it wrong.
I'm gonna duck.
But he said, a wise man will change his mind and a fool never will.
I think you
Unless
told
the fool was right. Unless
Well,
the fool was right.
well,
and he just everybody thought he was.
yeah, I don't know. That's
you
just,
told me that
that's
about
what he told me.
You told me that about a year ago.
Uh,
You told me that about a year ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Bratton, I think what you need to do is, we actually did not put this on the agenda, so it's,
To put it on the agenda.
to put it on the agenda.
My motion is to add it to the agenda for action.
I second the motion.
At the August meeting?
Yes.
August.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion on the motion to put it on the August meeting? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank all of you for discussion, Mr. Coker and everybody, and I think the
Is that meeting
public
adjourned?
just needs to let everyone know how they feel, but, and they got 3 weeks basically to do that, and so let all the aldermen know how you feel, one way or the other. That's what we need to hear, both sides. Okay, let's move on and get into the matter of business. Vice Mayor McDowell, I think we've got a couple of items under plan.
The first will be ordinance number 12-29. This will be a first reading. An ordinance to amend the City of Portland, Tennessee zoning map by rezoning an area of property located at 800 Highway 52 East, map 33, parcel 60, from Central Business District to RS 40, Low Density Residential District. It's property of Mac Jenkins at 800 Highway 52 East. Move to approve.
Have a motion, do we have a
Second.
second? Any comments or questions?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions, I guess. Is this property destined to be commercial based on our planning map that we instituted?
Mike, it's actually in an odd spot. It's the property
Right.
right across from Austin Drive that for
I
some
know which
reason.
one it is, and I'm confused about it because all the surrounding property is not commercial.
Right.
So it does not adjoin any commercial property, and is it not on our planning map currently to be commercial?
Are we rezoning it to commercial? Mine says from
Going back to residential.
CBD to
Yeah,
residential.
we're going back there, and we come before us 5 years ago. Well, make it commercial, and I'm curious, why do we make it commercial then if it wasn't on our?
What happened, you have some history you want me to?
No, go ahead. If you-
What happened at that time, Mr. Jenkins purchased that property, and he had a business, because he actually had the contract with the city, the heavy equipment contract. At that time, there was no design review, so the planning commission was uncomfortable with actually doing the GCS.
So they rezoned it to CB, which central business, which was totally,
Out
in a
of
sense,
whack,
out of
but-
whack.
Right.
But with that, he could put an office in there with the idea that later on that it would go commercial. I think in his conversation with the mayor that at this point, the idea that it would be more compatible to the community if it was residential. And I think it's a good move for, not only for him personally, but for the community.
Right, he's, basically, he's reached the age of retirement, and he's interested in selling it, and it's just, for him, it'll be better to sell it as a residential instead of a commercial.
If I'm not mistaken, this is a 5-acre tract, and just that small little spot there that where the house is CBD, and behind it, that property is R40.
That's correct.
That's right.
And to answer your question, it probably wasn't a good zone to begin with.
Because actually, when you go further on down, you know, there was even discussion of some property there at Haynes Lane, Airport Road, and 52, wanted GCS, and it was even, I think, talked down to Central Business District
Yeah.
instead of being wide open. So I think, you know, this fits more the map than what it was. So any other questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ordinance number 12-30, this is the first reading also. An ordinance to amend the City of Portland, Tennessee zoning map by rezoning an area of property located at 802 South Broadway from RS-20, low-density residential district, to office professional service district, property of Troy and Timothy Tomlinson. Move to approve.
Have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. Discussions or questions?
Just to clarify, this does meet our current planning area, because we wanted to do office.
This is
all the
next
way
door to
down
Farm
the-
Bureau.
Just want to make sure we realize that, though we don't adjoin it, that's part of the plan right we're doing.
And what's planned on going in there is an eye care place.
Is it what?
Dr. Graves, who's here, is planning on moving his eye business
Oh,
to
eye care.
This shaded areas, they're already
OPS.
OPS, right? Those 802, 808, and 810's only three that are not that,
Correct.
yeah.
So it'll just be falling in line with the rest of it. All right, any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Dr. Graves, I don't know if anybody, but this is first reading, has to be 2 readings. At our next, we'll have time to get it on August 6th, since it's 3 weeks, won't we? 15 days. Okay. So either be August 6th or the next meeting, because we have to have so much time between. Then it'll be a second reading with a chance for public hearing. All right, anything else under planning, Vice Mayor?
No, sir, that's everything.
All right, next we go into Public Works.
It's ordinance 12-27, second reading. It's an ordinance to authorize a contract between the City of Portland, Tennessee and Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency for the 2012 and 2013 Low-Income Energy Assistance Program. There was a public hearing held prior to the meeting with no one speaking in opposition, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. Any other comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution 12-62 is a resolution authorizing the acceptance for the best bid for wheel refuge containers for fiscal year 2013. This was discussed at our last work study. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
Just quickly, the last meeting, Alderman Menace requested information on what the policy, I'm sorry, was it Alderman Menace or Alderman White? Somebody requested policy.
Mr. White.
And we was given that. The only thing that I found lacking in that policy, and I don't know if it's something we should create or not create, is how people go about getting replacements or those things, because we discussed that, and it turns out there was some ambiguity there, and between inside of Public Works itself, we discovered, so I don't know if this is something we should address or not address, but we
Well, we're-
realize there's really not a policy addressing it.
It's gonna be on the next work study.
Okay.
That's one of the items to get through these and go ahead and furnished, you know, so you give you an opportunity to be reading. But that will be one of the items of the next work study to particularly, because we do need to be sure we got a definite policy.
Well, you know, on this resolution that you've got here, got a copy of it. And this is the way I thought I remembered it. It says there'll be no charge, no additional charge to the customer for the replacement. And you know, we've added several things. We've added the fee, went up to $16 or $18. And we've done, went up on the carts a time or two. And, you know, if you want to set a time period to where they get a free cart, that's fine. But just to say, nah, we're going to charge them for every cart, I think is the wrong thing to do, because people pay their taxes, they pay the fee for the monthly pickup, and they pay for the cart. So just to say they're going to pay for the next cart too, I don't think is right.
And that's
I'm
what
just-
we need to work
yeah.
out in our work study is get that down, and if we want to do the warranty period. I mean, there's several different ways we can do it, but I think you're.
I know mine's 5 or 6 years old now, it's still
So-
fine.
But yeah, that's something, and we do need to address it, and we, like I say, it will be on next work study, so, which is next Monday night. So. All right, any other actual discussion on this resolution? Move
Just-
forward with purchasing.
Just to kind of, for public information, because we discuss these things at work study, and it doesn't go out over the airwaves. This is not the lowest bid that we received, but it is the only bid we received for the cart that was spec'd. We spec'd a certain brand of cart, and this was the only company that came back with no exceptions.
Right.
What did the bid come back? I forgot.
I can pull that up.
$52.98 per cart.
And we're
Yeah.
sticking with total.
Yes, sir.
Right, because over the years, it has proven to be a.
More durable.
Durable.
Which is actually cheaper than the old resolution.
All right, any other comments on the resolution? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna oppose because we didn't take the low bid.
Right.
And I'm really opposed to the, forcing the people to buy them. I think, it would be cheaper on the taxpayers to let them buy a three 30-gallon cart, furnish them themselves, and we could save this $20 to $30 or $40,000 a year, whatever it is we're paying for these carts. So I'm voting no for that reason.
Okay. Was there any other no's, or that's only? Okay. All right, I think that's all you have under Public Works, because we're deferring the next item to the. to Chris
Legislative,
to
yes.
Be here, so.
Beg your pardon?
I said,
Yeah.
so that's all, we're deferring that other item to the next meeting when Mr. Newton can be here. Item on legislative resolution 12-63, a resolution approving the best bid for improvements to Portland Public Safety Building. The base bid amount of $95,227.83 with an alternate bid of $15,440.40, and this is to be awarded to Purdue Trucking. To have a motion to get it on the floor.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
This is phase 2 of the public safety building, where we've had all the flood, and we've basically got phase 1 just about done. They're getting close. I think we're paving today and a few more cleanup and a few other works. This will actually go into a few things outside, you know, on the inside work of being the sheetrock taken out of where the mold, different things was. This was a 100% grant paid for by FEMA, federal funds through the flood situation. Does anyone got any questions or comments?
I got a comment that Thomas might check on. I noticed that catch basin up on Reed Street. It's, the dirt is caved in around it.
Okay.
That needs some attention.
Yeah, they've got some final cleanup and a few other things to do.
Well, this has already been strawed and sowed.
They still got final
Oh, okay.
They had
Okay.
the final check over Gwinnett.
Okay.
So it would
All
still
right.
be a final inspection.
So it's,
And they've got one ditch to work on up there. Then, like I say, they've finished, and there's a few other things they've still got on that phase to finish up. All right, any other comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is resolution, I should let you done that, Mike, it's actually public safety. Resolution 12-64, it's a reappointment of one member to the Cable Television Commission, and that member is Steve Broadway. I'd like to reappoint him to a full term. He filled in this last time for someone and has done a good job. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, in light of deferring the possible reconsideration of the charter, would it be appropriate to defer this until that meeting? So if that were to pass, then this would come back into play?
Yes.
Oh, item C.
Yeah.
Yeah, item C.
So you have a motion to defer?
I make a
to
motion
the
to
August
defer
6th meeting?
to the August 6th meeting.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Anyone else in discussion on that?
And just to clarify what that item is, we were back and forth about.
I'm
this
sorry about
particular
that.
Position in the charter and whether to take it out since it didn't pass the first time, but I understand.
And if it were to pass, the item would be to rescind the financial director position. And if the charter change were to pass, then we would need to leave that in.
Right, okay. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, let's see, and that's where I got a bunch of notes. Mr. Callis, I think you wanted.
I'd like for us, if the will of this body, I'd like for us to solicit an RFP or bid for the paving of Portland Boulevard. I believe we all agree that's one of the worst areas that we have continuously. I'd like to see what that cost will be. I want to have an idea, a real cost idea of what it would be. And we all said that we were going to be serious about paving roads. Well, I'm serious. I want to get something done. We put $172,000 into the budget for paving, and I think that we really need to take some action. Let's figure out. That's one of our worst roads. I would like to get a bid on that. We could actually have it bid in really two sections. The ending leg probably can do without paving, and we've got two different separate legs inside that, but I'd like for that road to take a look at
I'd
from
like,
Nashville all the way up.
and I'm not trying to put you off, but I'd like for us to do this at work study and go over the list. Thomas has got a list already done. And also, Ms. Harden has agreed to help us on paving inside the city limits too. So I think we know Sumner County like we did before. So I think in comparing bids, that would be the cheapest. I think if we discuss the work study, and also we've kind of made an agreement with Mr. Brown on the little section of East Ninth Street that's supposed to have been done back in the 70s. So we need to look at, if we're going to bid it, I'd like to know exactly where we're going to bid. I think Thompson, we got some rough estimates to kind of get us an idea. This is what we can come up with.
Well, I'm willing to do that.
Right.
Okay, but I'm serious. I will
Yeah, I've
become an
always-
absolute
Yeah.
burden because that road is terrible. It's one of our longest stretches inside the city.
Which road
It's at the top of the list too, on the priority list.
Remain.
Oh.
Right.
Alderman Harbin corrected me. He said, "Will you become or remain?" I will remain a burden if we don't.
You're not a burden.
If we don't get it paved, all right? Because we need to do.
I think we
I
got
was
a
thinking of
couple.
another term, but I guess burden would be one.
Beast
But,
of burden.
Thomas, have that
Starts
list
with
for us
pain, I
again,
bet.
your rough cost. And did Ms. Harden go ahead and give us, all right, so why don't we, we'll go at in full detail and then take it to August 6th for some action.
All right.
I think when this was discussed before, we did agree to move East Ninth Street up to the
Right, we had talked about it.
top
Said-
because it's been promised for so many years, and he's agreed to build or says he would build another building back there if we'd pave the street and put a
He
cul-de-sac.
called me today, wanted to know where we were, and I said, well, we're in the process of the next work study to discuss. So then we will take action, and we'll decide, really which way we want to go.
Don't forget the grant in there for it.
All right, so we're going to, at work study, then we'll have action item for August 6th meeting on that. The next item would be an item that would be under airport that you were handed out, grant contract. Do we have a motion to get it on the floor?
So move.
We have a second.
Second.
This is a yearly item that we get from the state. It's a reimbursement for maintenance that we do throughout the year into our regular fund. And then once a year, we apply for this grant contract where we get reimbursed back, which would be a total amount of $14,300. And we have to enter this contract each and every year, even though it's a repetitive every year. But this is money, they're not anything special. It's in the daily course of maintenance of the airport. Only certain items can apply to it, but every year we apply to get those things back. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I think I know the answer to this question, but I just want to be sure. When you say that it's a reimbursement, that means there's no match or anything. This is just
No,
money
it's
coming
that
back to us.
we have to already through the year spend it, and then there's certain things qualify, then Denise goes through that list and qualify, then they'll pay back up to this amount of money. I think it's 50% of those. So if we have an item that we spend $1,000 on, they'll pay us $500.
So
up to
there's
amount of
no
14.
new money involved in
No,
this.
it's-
Yeah.
Actually, you're getting the benefit of this year's budget. You're going to get the benefits of revenue that was actually spent last year.
Mhm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then Mr. Harbin, I think you had something alcohol and beverage.
I just have one item I want to add to our beer ordinance, and actually David has drafted that. If he could present it, please.
Under Title 8, Chapter 2, we presently have Section 201 through 218. This is an amendment to Title 8, 212 to amend that section by deleting the present paragraph 9 and 10 and adding a new paragraph 10 in lieu thereof, which will read as follows. And the reason I need to probably, under this Title 8.212, it is titled Prohibited Conduct or Activities by Beer Permit Holders. Then it says as follows: it shall be unlawful for any beer permit holder to, and then it lists presently 10 things. Well, it lists 12 paragraphs. 2 of those have been previously deleted, and by making this amendment, we're going to eliminate 9 and 10, which have been deleted, and they renumber the other paragraphs, so we'll wind up with 10 paragraphs. But it will read as follows: to violate any state criminal statute or law where the violation results in the adjudication of a misdemeanor or felony, or the violation of any city ordinance, which violation of state law or city ordinance occurs on or about the premises to which the beer permit issued by the Alcoholic Beverage Board applies. Did I get that?
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Make a motion.
Yeah, we need to get it on the floor.
Motion to approve.
All right, do I have a motion to have a second?
Second.
Okay.
This is going to have to be an ordinance, right? Because it's changing an ordinance. Okay.
Right. All right, any other comments or questions? Like I
Now,
said,
is this gonna be something we can depend on, when something comes up, that you're gonna sit over there and say, yes, I can defend this?
Well, Melvin, Alderman Minister, I should say,
That would be fine.
I would like to think I've been dependable before. Sometimes I'm not always sure that this board has properly dealt with the ordinance that's already been passed, but I'm confident that you will in the future.
all right. Any other comments or questions? Which this was debated fully in the meeting before our regular council meetings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Does anyone else have anything?
You might
from
just,
tonight?
Tim or whomever, Brian, Chairman, this is just basically putting some stronger teeth in our beer ordinance.
That's correct. It's basically just making it to where if there's a violation of any laws, that we have the ability to act on them, where currently it's questionable as to whether if they break a law and it doesn't fall under a certain provision, then we may or may not have the ability to impose
This
any
just
fines.
gives us broader power to enforce it.
It does.
Thank you, Brian.
Anything else? If not, we'll consider a meeting adjourned.